Most of the time when you've got a lot of sun, the chances are you've exposed yourself to both UVA and UVB rays. I mean, the only time where you haven't that I can think of just offhand is in a car.
Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 112 of the Healthy Skin Show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about hyperpigmentation. Believe it or not, this entire interview is the result of one of the questions that was submitted a while ago from a listener of the show. And it took me a little bit of time to figure out who was the best person to have to talk about this. So hyperpigmentation is essentially where your skin, not that it decides to do it on its own, but who knows, sometimes skin has a mind of its own. But basically, your skin changes color in certain areas. So it becomes either lighter or darker than what your natural pigment is. And it may be splotchy or in patches. And for many people, it just makes you feel uncomfortable. It can be the result of using topical steroids, treatments that you have on your skin, or just exposure to the sun. Before this question gets answered about what can you do about hyperpigmentation, I wanted to personally answer another listener's question quickly. Seth wrote in and said, a bunch of people told me that I should get some food sensitivity testing done because my rashes must be caused by my diet. I was skeptical, but decided to do it, and so much ended up coming back on the test that I'm kind of freaking out, and I have no idea what to even do with these results. Do you have any suggestions? Great question, Seth. Thank you so much for submitting it, because I know other people have also had this type of thing happen to them. Now, the first thing to consider is that there are different types of food sensitivity or food intolerance tests out there. Some are done through blood. I've seen other ones that are done by testing your hair. The ones that are done on your hair, if that's what you did, I would basically put those results aside and probably ignore them, because there's no way that your hair can tell you what foods you're sensitive to. As far as blood tests are concerned, that can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes there is some truth to them. There's some accuracy, and there's a really big debate about what food sensitivity panels are better than others. In my clinical experience, I've pretty much stopped running and recommending food sensitivity or food intolerance tests because oftentimes they're really only showing us or telling us one main point, and that is that you have high gut permeability or very high leakiness throughout the gut. And if you do have that, a lot is going to come back and get flagged on those tests. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're sensitive to those foods. It's just an indication that the barrier of the gut has become permeable. Now, this is the other piece to that puzzle, is that the foods themselves don't cause leaky gut. It's not because you ate a lot of eggs or you ate eggs every day. It is because of something else. It can be outside of your diet or your body, but a lot of times it's happening because of something going wrong within the gut function realm or your microbiome. So that said, initially, if you did have a blood panel run, I would say focus on the moderate to high or severe categories. Ignore anything that came back as mild. Those are just things that you generally are exposed to, so don't worry about those. If a ton came back as moderate and severe, at that point, you've got to make a decision of what's going to be the best step forward for you. You really need to find out what's causing this leakiness throughout your gut, rather than just assuming that the food eliminations alone will solve the issue. I would suggest that you remove gluten. I always make that suggestion because that is the one protein that has clinically been shown to increase gut permeability. And I would also recommend, if you're eating kind of like the standard American diet, lots of fast food, lots of processed foods, which I would suggest you clean up. Clean up your diet. That is one of the first most important pieces that you can do. And it doesn't mean you have to go on some sort of really restrictive diet. Just clean up your diet. Get rid of the junk, get rid of the processed foods, and eat more whole foods. Simpler ingredients, and if need be, make sure to cook things at home and have leftovers available for lunches and dinners. And if you really are confused, this would be the time to ask for help because an elimination diet might help your skin, but it might not. It could also land you in the camp where you eliminate those foods and then you're unable to add them back in down the road. So getting help may be one of the best things to do so you know what your best next steps are. So if you have a burning question that you would love for me to either create an entire episode out of or get your question answered on the show, head on over to healthyskinshow.com. Scroll down, you'll see a little microphone icon, and there you can leave us a message and let us know what your question is. That way I can either find someone to help answer it for you or I'll answer it myself. Without further ado, let's dive into today's conversation on hyperpigmentation. Did you know that the Healthy Skin Show is turning 1? Putting together the show, releasing episodes twice a week, and connecting amazing guests with you has been so rewarding, especially with all of your notes and appreciation for what we're doing here. But the truth is, the show isn't just about me or the guests. It's also about you. That's why I'm super excited to celebrate the show's first birthday with a giveaway that includes prizes worth over $400 from some of my favorite companies like Red Therapy Company, Osmia, True Moringa, Skin Probiotics, Redmond's Real Salt, Paleo Valley, and Lily's Sweets. Holy moly, I'm so jealous that I can't win these prizes, but you can. Just head on over to healthyskinbirthday.com and enter to win. The birthday contest ends on Sunday, February 9th. All details about eligibility can be found there. So get on over to healthyskinbirthday.com, enter to win, because this is just one way that I want to say thank you for your support, tuning into, and sharing the show. Hi everyone, welcome back. I've got a great returning guest for you today. You may remember that Dr. Tony Yoon joined us a number of months ago, and I really appreciated him being on the show because what he does is a lot different from all of my other guests. And I had all of these questions, believe it or not, from listeners about hyperpigmentation that are not what I deal with, but Dr. Yoon does. So I figured it'd be great to have him back to talk about this and give you guys some straight answers. If you don't know him, he is known as America's Holistic Beauty Doc. Dr. Anthony Youn is a board-certified plastic surgeon, best-selling author, and television personality. He's one of the nation's foremost experts on turning back the clock without surgery. His recent public television special, The F.A.C.S with Dr. Anthony Youn, has been viewed by millions. He's the author of the best-selling book, The F.A.C.S, and the host of a popular podcast, The Holistic Plastic Surgery Show, which I was on. Dr. Youn is a frequent guest of The Rachel Ray Show, The Doctors, and The Dr. Oz Show. I've actually seen him on a ton of press, including different places like Harper's Bazaar, U.S. News and World Report, Town and Country. I feel like you've been on CNN before. And he's got a really great website, dryoun.com, and he has actually been named one of the nation's best top plastic surgeons. And the reason that I have him on, for all of you listening going, wait, why are you having a plastic surgeon on? Dr. Youn has a very different approach. He really appreciates a holistic, full body look at how things are so that he can support you, whatever your needs are, to get and reach your goals. And I really appreciate that about him. What he's doing is different. I went in skeptical, and as I talked with him more and more, I realized that he's doing something that other people aren't. So that's why I think he's a great person for you to learn from, to follow. I learned a ton from him, and I'm really honored to have him back. Thank you, Dr. Youn, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jen. I mean, you could have cut that down in half and still would be really nice, but thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate what you do. And that's the hard part here is like, okay, so full disclosure, I'm like about 40 and I start noticing that I'm getting age spots. And I also get all of these readers that have written me asking about hyperpigmentation, melasma, weird patches that they don't know what to do with, what nutrient can I take? What supplement? And I'm like, ooh, I don't really know the answer to that question. And so I reached out to you and you're like, yeah, let's talk about that. So can you tell us a little bit, what exactly is hyperpigmentation of the skin?
So I think simply put, it's spots. And we all have different types of spots. Sometimes we talk about them as very cute, like, oh, look, that person has freckles. Other times we give them names like age spots or liver spots. But they come in a couple of different kinds. I guess I would probably very simply separate into three different bins. The first bin are the spots that you are typically born with, that you can develop sometimes as you get older, that you really can't do much with. And those are moles. Okay, so we have moles, we have birthmarks. Those aren't necessarily age-related issues as they are more genetics and that type of thing. So we would take moles out of the equation, other than if you've got a mole, it's getting bigger, you've got weird colors in it, it's changing shape, then you got to look out for the potential risk of skin cancer. But taking moles out of the equation, when you've got other types of pigment that you dislike, there are two other kind of groups you can group it in. There are the sun-related spots, which freckles, age spots, sunspots, liver spots. Technically, there are many, many names for the same thing.
They're all the same thing.
The same thing. It's melanin that has gone kind of haywire from typically sun damage. And then the other group is melasma. Okay, melasma is more of a patchy pigmentation, and that patchy pigmentation can be related often with pregnancy and other hormonal changes in the body. Melasma is a really hard thing to treat, okay? And I wish that I had melasma is one of the questions I get all the time on my Facebook group, on Instagram, on YouTube, and nobody has a really good answer for it. Age spots, however, or sunspots or liver spots, whatever you want to call them, there we do have answers though for.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I feel like you start getting them, well, I could be wrong, but I tend to find like you get them around the face, like I have one on the side of my eye, and then I noticed on my parents and actually on myself, I start to get them on like the back of my hands and whatnot. So where is the most common spots that you tend to see them, and is there anything you can do about, like, should I have been probably using more sunscreen earlier in life, or am I kind of doomed with these things continuing to develop?
So basically sunspots, we'll just call them sunspots, okay? Because they're age spots, liver spots. The only reason I call them liver spots has nothing to do with the liver. It's just that they're brown, like the color of liver. That's why they call it liver spots. But basically, sunspots are caused by ultraviolet radiation, by ultraviolet exposure to your skin. You are more likely to get sunspots in areas where your skin is exposed. And so that's why if you compare the skin of your face to the skin of your chest to the skin of your butt, you don't get age spots on your butt. I mean, unless you're a nudist, you're not going to have age spots on your butt because they're due to the sun, okay? Whereas, sometimes you don't get many age spots as much on the face because a lot of women may wear, let's say, mineral makeup or sunscreen, but then you start seeing it on the hands and on the chest where they may not apply it as much. And people who drive a lot, often you'll see more spots on the left hand and the left side of the face because that's getting exposed to the sun. Now, interestingly enough, some people say, well, I'm driving a car, I've got the window, why do I need to put sunscreen on? Well, actually, the windows of your car will block the ultraviolet rays that are UVB rays that will cause you a sunburn. Okay, so you don't get sunburns if you're sitting in your car driving, but they don't block the UVA rays, which can cause premature aging and sun damage and result in spots. So those are some of the most common areas: the hands, the chest, the left side of the face, typically more than the right if you're driving a lot. I guess if you're a passenger a ton, I suppose it could be the right side of your face. And where you don't see it are the areas that are covered, the genitals, the butt.
So what's interesting is that as you're saying this and you're comparing the difference between the two UVA versus UVB, so this may not necessarily have to do with how burned you've gotten. It more has to do with that specific band of light that doesn't necessarily cause burning. So that would be why a car scenario would still.
Yeah, but most of the time when you've got a lot of sun, the chances are you've exposed yourself to both UVA and UVB rays. I mean, the only time where you haven't that I can think of just offhand is in a car. Okay. But most of the time, you're out sunning yourself, you're out exercising, you're doing work outside, you're going to be exposed to both. I suppose one situation is if you're wearing a non-broad spectrum sunblock, where it only blocks, let's say, UVB rays, then I suppose that's the case. But there's so few of those anymore. I mean, most sunblocks and sunscreens are broad spectrum.
So what do you do then? Like, is this something that I'm just stuck with, or any of the listeners are stuck with for life, like they just keep progressing? Or is there something you can do to, number one, reduce them, the ones that you have, and then stop the development or progression of other sunspots?
So prevention obviously is the first thing, and that's wearing sunscreen. Okay. And so wearing sunscreen is going to help obviously prevent it. The bad thing about these types of sunspots is that you can't get rid of them unless you actively do something. Okay. So if you aren't doing something to actively get rid of your spots, they're just going to get worse and worse and worse and continue to build up. And I do believe, although I don't know that's scientifically proven, I do believe that sun damage that you may get earlier in life may present later in your skin. I see that in my patients all the time, but I don't know of any study that's necessarily shown that that's the case. So how do you treat sunspots? I mean, this is what your audience wants to know. There are a number of ways to treat it. The chemical-free way to treat it is to use a treatment called IPL, intense pulse light. Another name for that is the photofacial. And this is similar to a laser. Technically, it's not a laser, but very similar, where you use a light with a certain type of wavelength to target the dark color in the dark pigment in that spot. And so you zap the skin with it. The spot will typically turn darker after as little as a few minutes to a few days. And then after about a week, a lot of the spots will actually slough off. They will fall off.
Oh, wow.
Now, we usually recommend 4 to 5 treatments for maximal effect. The treatment is not painful. It may feel a little bit like somebody's pinching your skin, but it's not something that you need pain pills or numbing medicine or anything like that for it. And it does work really well. It's no downtime other than your skin looking a little darker once again as it's getting as those spots are sloughing off. That's a really nice way for those people who say, look, I don't want to put creams on my skin. I don't want to deal with that. I want to get rid of it quickly. Then doing IPL is a reasonable option. It's not cheap. In my office, I think we charge $300 for a full face IPL session. I think if I remember right, and I don't look at the numbers that much for cost, but I think we have like a buy 4, get 1 free. So I think if it's $300, you buy 4, it's $1,200 and you get 5 treatments. And that's usually enough to really, really reduce that pigment. So that's really a great way. There are other ways to get rid of pigment like chemical peels, more aggressive laser treatments, but those typically have downtime to them. And so the easiest, best way to get rid of spots, chemical-free, would be IPL.
And what about like those vitamin C serums? Do those work on these spots, or is that not applicable in this case?
Yeah, so there are a lot of topicals that can claim to reduce spots. And the most effective one is controversial, so hydroquinone. Hydroquinone basically is an ingredient in certain skin lightening creams. You can get it over-the-counter strength, which is 2%. Prescription strength is 4%, and some compound pharmacies even will do 6% or more. If you look at pure efficacy, effectiveness for creams, hydroquinone is most effective to reduce the activity of melanin, by far most effective. The problem with hydroquinone, though, is it has been shown to cause cancer in laboratory rats in very high percentages, in high concentrations. It is banned, at least prescription strength is banned in Europe, but it's still used in the United States. So you got to be very careful with it. It really is something where we actually have used it in my practice for the last 15 years selectively. There are other negatives with it, is in that if you use it for longer than approximately 6 months, you can get tolerance to it. You can get rebound hyperpigmentation if you use it for too long and then you go off of it. And then if you have really dark skin, especially if you're have of African ancestry, there is something called Ocranosis, which is a pigmentation type of a disorder, and it's kind of a patchy disorder that some people get when they're using hydroquinone. So I only really recommend it under the care of a physician, dermatologist, or plastic surgeon. Only use it for 6 months at a time, and that's if you really have got bad spots. Okay. But that's the most effective, but something that, once again, exercise caution.
And so if you're then applying, so we're in the car, we've got our sunscreen, which is blocking both UVA and UVB light. Even outside, we're wearing our sunscreen and a hat.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that does a decent job in preventing the onset of new age spots?
In general, yes. But if you want to do more, so there are a lot of, you mentioned vitamin C earlier. So when you're looking at these types of creams, hydroquinone is one that is a powerful skin lightener. But once again, there's issues with toxicity. So what else can you do? I have one in my skincare line called Youn Beauty Brightening Cream. Very simple, not like a real fancy name. And what that is there are a number of other ingredients out there that you can look for brightening creams that are safe, that you can use long term, that can help suppress the pigment as well from developing. So the one that I have in mind is called Kojic Acid. That's probably, from what I can tell, looking at the literature and the studies, Kojic Acid is probably the number 2 most effective skin lightening ingredient out there. It's very well tolerated. And like I said, a lot of skin creams have them. That's a main component in my cream as well. Other ones that you can look for that are very safe, niacinamide is another one that's used in a lot of over-the-counter topical brightening creams and spot reduction creams. Also very safe for long-term use and pretty inexpensive. And the other thing, if you want to go real natural, is licorice extract. So my product, the brightening cream, has licorice extract and kojic acid in it. So some people will literally take licorice extract from a health food store, put it in, in like a dropper, and then put that on their spots. The problem with that, it's so much easier to take a cream that's made for your skin, that you put on your skin and it blends in and it absorbs in your skin, versus taking drops of 6 weeks for that to work, okay, for you to start seeing those changes. It can take much longer if you're doing something less aggressive like niacinamide or licorice extract.
Got it.
Now, one way that you can supercharge it, if you're going the cream route, is you can get your skin exfoliating, okay? So the creams will suppress the melanin in the skin, but the creams aren't going to actually get rid of the melanin, okay? So there's a difference there. So the melanin is still going to be there, the creams will suppress it, and then what happens is our skin gradually turns over, exfoliates itself. And eventually those spots will come to the surface and they will slough off, you'll get rid of them. And because you've suppressed the melanin, you're not going to have new spots come up. So it makes sense that if you get your skin turning over more quickly, that you can get rid of those spots quicker than if you just apply the skin lightening ingredient. So what I recommend in general for those people who want to be more aggressive is you can combine then a skin lightening cream like our Youn Beauty Brightener or the other ones out there with something that exfoliates your skin. You can do it very simply by using, let's say, a Clarisonic type of ultrasonic brush. You could do it using a manual scrub. Or my preference would be to combine that with a retinol cream. Retinol will actually exfoliate your skin. Also, retinol itself is a very mild skin lightener too, kind of on the same wavelength as vitamin C. Vitamin C is a great antioxidant. It's great for your skin. It helps with the building blocks collagen in the skin. Vitamin C is a very mild skin lightener. I wouldn't just use that to lighten my skin because it's not powerful enough. But hey, if you combine the vitamin C with the brightener, with kojic acid or niacinamide, and hey, if you even add something like a retinol, now you're hitting that pigment in many, many different ways.
And with the retinol creams, my recollection is you have to be careful of sun exposure with that because it is easier for you to burn.
That is true. Yeah, and it depends too on how aggressive it is. Most of that is based off of prescription strength tretinoin or Retin-A. Most people, to get that, you got to get through a doctor's office. It's pretty darn aggressive. So most people, I don't necessarily recommend going with that route. If you've got real thick, oily skin, then that may be a better option for you. But otherwise, go with a over-the-counter retinol moisturizer because your skin's going to have a better chance of tolerating it. And you're still going to get a lot of those anti-aging, exfoliating benefits, and even the pigment reduction too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, I just want to say to everybody who's listening, Dr. Youn has a new book out. And the reason that I just wanted to share this is my dad's a surgeon. And so I felt like when he told me about the book, there was just something that interested me so much in it because the life of a surgeon is very different even from a regular doctor. And so his book is called Playing God, The Evolution of a Modern Surgeon, which is available now. Dr. Youn, could you just tell us briefly, what would someone find in it? It's an interesting title, Playing God. And a lot of times we'll say doctors are playing God. What is the book about?
So the book basically is a journey of how does somebody go from being kind of a clueless new doctor trained by old-fashioned surgeons who believe that they are basically God's gift, to the world, to becoming what is essentially a holistic modern surgeon of today. A surgeon who doesn't think that he or she is God, but relies on God or a higher power to help him or her to help their patients. So there's a lot of stories here that are uplifting. There are some that are quite shocking because I am a plastic surgeon and not all of my patients are really nice and kind and genuine people. But it's how do you get to that point where you really become that modern holistic surgeon of today? And so we've had a lot of great reviews of it. And I'm real excited about it because it really has, I think, resonated with so many people in getting into the psyche of physicians and today's wild west of medicine.
That is so true. There is a lot of wild west. And one of the things that struck me about you, and I think that's why I wanted to let people know how highly I think of you, is because you are one of the most humble surgeons I've ever met, and I've met a lot. My dad has been in the world of ophthalmic surgery for a long, long time. He's in his 70s, and so I've met a lot of surgeons, and you were very different from most surgeons. And I know that your faith is very important to you, and you really do care deeply about your patients, and that's why I am so grateful that you're always willing to come back and share what you know here. And I think for anybody who has an interest in understanding this aspect of not just Dr. Youn, but other physicians that are out there, this is a great book to check out. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes along with Dr. Youn's website. And he's got a great Instagram account as well. So you should follow him there, especially he's always showing different procedures and tips and all sorts of things. I always learn a lot from him. And of course, we'll make sure to connect you guys with all of the ways that you can get in touch with Dr. Youn. He's also got a bunch of great free guides as well in case you're interested in knowing more about anti-aging and whatnot. He is the person to go to. Dr. Youn, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
No, you're great. Thank you so much, Jen. It was so much fun. And I have to have you back on my show as well.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
I'm so appreciative that we have folks like Dr. Youn to come on the show and share his expertise with us. I plan to have him back. Don't worry, we've got a really great next episode planned for you guys. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, head on over to skinterrupt.com/112 to leave your comments there so we can keep the conversation going. And don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. That way, the next episode lands on your mobile device without you having to do a thing. And if you know someone who's been struggling with hyperpigmentation and isn't sure what their best options are, share this episode with them. That way, they know what they can and can't do in order to help their specific issue. In the meantime, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.